Hey, thanks for tuning in. What I want to talk about today is what risks would you potentially have when you move into retirement? Another big question that we're often asked, what kind of risk do I really need to take into consideration? Well, it's interesting because, as you get closer and closer to retirement, you spent maybe 20, 30, 40 years preparing for this time when you're going to make this transition from the accumulation phase to the distribution phase. And I will tell you, there's a lot to consider in making this transition, right? So during the accumulation phase, what are we most concerned about? We're most concerned about saving money, right? We're most concerned about growth on our investments, right? So we're really concerned about growing as much money as we possibly can, getting the highest level of return, getting to a point so you can accumulate this wealth. So now you can take that wealth and you can use it during the distribution phase. But it's very complex when you start talking about now, what risk am I going to have as I go through this distribution phase? Now you're at the pinnacle of life. You're at the top of the mountain. Now you got to come down this mountain. You're trying to say, how do I do this with ease and eliminate anxiety, concerns, because I really want to be able to spend time on things that are really important to me, like my family, my work optional lifestyle, check all the things on my recreation bucket list. What do I got to keep in mind? What risk could I potentially have as I'm working through my distribution phase of life? So we created a list for you today that we often find that are very, very important when it comes to the distribution phase of life. And the first thing on the list is longevity, right? So what is longevity? The fact that you could live a long life, especially for those out there that are looking to be aggressive about your retirement and retire early on. Let's say you want to retire at 60 or 62. You're really young in today's standards at 60 and 62. You could potentially live 30, 40 years in retirement. Right? People are living longer than they ever have before. I often ask people when they come into the office, I said, do you know anybody that's age 100? And I always get somebody that says, absolutely, my aunt or my whatever, my grandma, my mother, my father, they're near age 100, right? So people are living to age 100 with actually somewhat of a quality of life. So people are living longer. So you need to make sure that you've accumulated enough money to take on longevity. That's a big issue. Number two is your health. A big concern when you move into distribution of life, right? So there's no doubt that health is always a concern. We try to live the healthiest lifestyle that we possibly can. We exercise, we eat right, we do all the things we're supposed to do, but unfortunately, things happen, right? Our health deteriorates. So we have to take that into consideration. Oftentimes I find people don't put enough emphasis on the potential cost that they may have when it comes to healthcare. And as we all know, healthcare is very expensive, right? So you say, well, I have insurance, I have Medicare, and I have my Medicare supplement. But unfortunately, there are certain things that can happen to you in your distribution phase that Medicare and your health insurance doesn't cover, like certain types of prescriptions. So on average, we have found that there's studies out there that says once you reach age 65 through the life expectancy, you could potentially spend over $150,000 in medical expenses during your retirement. Are you prepared for those types of expenses? So that's another key element you need to consider in a potential risk as you move into retirement. Number three is inflation. Right? Inflation is something that we all need to take into consideration. And it's a gradual progression when it comes to inflation. What does inflation do? Inflation erodes your buying power over time. You need to make sure you factor that in to your retirement strategy. If you discount inflation, you will find that you'll be in a position where you're going to end up having more month than money. Right? We don't want that, right? We always want to have more money than month. But inflation over time, you might not feel the effects of inflation from week to week, month to month, year to year. But as you go into 2 years or 3 years or 4 years in retirement, you're going to start to feel the pinch where you're going to need to have the ability to increase your cash flow because of the inflation eroding your buying power. The next is taxes, right? Now, we all know that it's mandatory that we pay taxes. So determining, how you derive your income, is it taxable income or is it tax-free income? For most of us, the majority of our income is taxable. What we don't have control over is what the future tax rates are going to be in the future. So we need to make sure we take into consideration how much money we have to pay the government. And that is something that is a continuing change from legislative risk, right? That's a legislative risk that we got to continue to keep in focus, because that is something we always got to make sure that we're aware of how much money we got to pay the government. So number 5 is market volatility. Now this is a big one, right? So market volatility, and it's really different when you're in the accumulation phase compared to the distribution phase. Why is that? So during the accumulation phase, when you're saving money and you're putting money away every month or every week or however you do that, and the market's up and down, and it always does that, and you're buying, sometimes you buy high in the market, sometimes you buy low in the market. But over time, that's a form of risk management, and you often benefit from market volatility as you're accumulating wealth. But when you change and you move from the accumulation phase to the distribution phase, market volatility can react much differently to your distribution phase. So the idea being market volatility can really have a negative impact on your distribution phase. When the market's up and down and you're taking distributions, that could really put you at a disadvantage, and it could deplete your money much quicker during the distribution phase. You have to find a way to manage market volatility. You have to have an investment strategy that's very disciplined, that can basically take away the big ups and downs in the market. And then lastly is sequence of returns. Sequence of returns kind of goes hand in hand with market volatility. Depending on how your performance is in your investment strategy, especially if your investments are integral to support your income, you need to make sure you have a way to control market volatility so your sequence returns are very efficient and consistent during your distribution phase of life. So these are some key elements that you really need to consider and take into consideration when you build your retirement plan, and risks in which that you could potentially be faced with. So there's a list of things here. So as you're building your plan and you're looking at making that transition from the accumulation phase to the distribution phase, these are things you typically don't think about when you're accumulating money, but they become very relevant during the distribution phase. Again, this is a big part of our peak formula to address all these things, all things financial, and making sure that you don't have money falling through the cracks. Again, thanks for tuning in. Please like, share, and follow us by clicking the button below. We'll see you next time.